local election headquarters. This is Politics Today with Jackie Kingston.
For the first time since 2017, Amarillo will have a new mayor in 2023. Ginger Nelson announcing she does not plan to run again. We'll hear more about her decision. And the lieutenant governor has announced his slate of legislative priorities. On it, building a state hospital here in the Panhandle. We'll talk with him about it next. Amarillo Mayor Ginger Nelson announces she will not run for re-election. Thanks for joining us this morning after what has been a very busy news week. We'll get right to it. Politics Today's Kaylee Green leading off our coverage with an exclusive interview with the mayor this morning.
Is there anything that you've learned during your time as mayor or anything that you wish you had approached differently in hindsight?
Yes, there are many things that I've learned and that I wish I had approached differently in hindsight. I've learned a lot about homelessness and the people involved in that issue. And I've grown a lot, in the city services surrounding it, I think, have grown a lot in the last 5 years. I've learned a lot about working with people who have passionate opinions on issues, and I would like a chance to have some do-overs on things like how we do public address at meetings, or the Civic Center. There are definitely some things in COVID that now, with more information, we would handle things differently, but we made the best decision we could at the time, based on the information that we had. So that was definitely a challenging situation. Yes, I've made a lot of mistakes, and I'm so grateful for the grace that people have given me. And, I need forgiveness where I've fallen short too, as we all do. But it's been a tremendous learning experience, and such an honor to serve. If I could play the hands over, I hope we would score more points this time on certain things. But I certainly, from my heart, always tried to make the best decision. Sometimes with only bad choices in front of us, and where I failed or now realize I could have done better, I hope people will forgive me.
Mayor, one thing I haven't had a chance to ask you about yet, and I'd like to give you a chance to address, is your letter to local church leaders about a drag show Christmas that was coming to Amarillo, which already happened, but received some controversial feedback. I mean, do you have any response or update to, what was said in that letter, or how you meant to approach it?
The letter was written to a particular group of people, those who share the Christian faith. And so I know a lot of people were upset about it, but it was actually written in defense of people's rights to have a show that someone in our community might disagree with. And there was a lot of misinterpretation, especially about the last paragraph of the letter. So, just to be very frank about it, I do not believe that God does not love. I believe God loves everyone. All of us are broken. So if you profess a certain thing or have a certain opinion, or God loves you. So for people who interpret that letter as saying that Jesus didn't love you, or this particular choice that someone has made keeps you from being able to be saved in God's eyes, that letter never said that. I don't believe that. And I grieve that someone could have interpreted it that way. So, given a chance to do that over, I would write that letter more tightly to make sure it couldn't be interpreted that way. But it was always written to be taken in the context of people who were in the church. And that last paragraph was truly a call to people in the church to be kind and to respect people who have different opinions than we have. And so, it didn't get always interpreted that way, but I think a lot of people didn't read it. They didn't read it all the way to the last paragraph, or they didn't read it in the context that it was written. So
Mayor Nelson is still fighting blood cancer, which she was diagnosed with while serving as mayor. She says it's a chronic illness. She says she's looking forward to resting and focusing on her health when her term ends. You can watch the rest of that interview on our website. Bell Textron is awarded a historic contract by the U.S. Army, and a Texas senator is praising the move. The V-280 Valor was chosen as the Army's new long-range assault aircraft. Bell's PR lead for the event, Michael Riley, says the contract has the potential to be the Army's largest helicopter award in 40 years. Senator Ted Cruz released a statement celebrating the move. He says in part, quote, Bell Textron Inc. is a premier aerospace manufacturer providing 5,500 good jobs to Texans and great military equipment for the U.S. Armed Forces. He goes on to say, no state has given more to protect our country than Texas. I'm so proud that Texas will build the next generation of helicopter to dominate our enemies on the field of battle. Kevin Carter, the president and CEO of the Amarillo Economic Development Corporation, says this is not only a historic deal for Bell, but for Amarillo as well.
I think the complete build out, if they build out the whole thing, is like anywhere from 30 to 50 years. I mean, what an enormous victory for the Bell team, and also just it's an incredible win for Amarillo to be able to say that. I mean, it really does secure Bell's future here in Amarillo.
Other news last week, the Texas Comptroller's Office announces cities and other entities across the state will be sent a total of $1.1 billion in local sales tax allocations for the month of December. When compared to December 2021, this allocation is an increase of around 12%. According to the Comptroller's website, Amarillo will receive more than $7.9 million, a 3% increase. The city of Canyon had a 14% increase and will receive more than $386,000. The city of Amarillo announced the temporary closure of sections of the Amarillo Civic Center. The closures are due to a failed cast iron sewer main line. The sewer line failure impacts the northeast side of the Cal Farley Coliseum. The area will be shut down for several days so crews can dig, remove, and replace that sewer line. The scheduled events will still happen. Visitors will not have access to restrooms, however, in the affected area. You may want to take a closer look, or wait rather, to pay your water bill. According to the city of Amarillo, while completing a system upgrade, there was an issue with the utility billing department's ability to process utility payments. Assistant City Manager Laura Storrs says the city's software is currently down. That includes issuing bills and receiving payments. Storrs says customers have two options when it comes to paying their bills. They can send their payment to the city and they can hold on to it for the time being, or the customer can choose to wait until the system is back up and running.
We have started bringing some of the systems up. We've encountered some issues, had to get with the software, and then had to remain keeping those systems down. The last thing we want to do is start receiving bills, drafting payments, any of those things, and have issues that start impacting our customers, like from a financial standpoint. We don't want to do that. We'd rather them hold on to their payments for now, wait till we're up and fully functioning, and then get those payments in.
Storrs says customers will not receive any late fees or penalties. She adds the city of Amarillo thanks the community for their patience during this time. Bills are already being filed in the Texas legislature. Coming up, we're talking with the lieutenant governor about what his legislative agenda is for the upcoming session. I'm Jackie Kingston. You're watching Politics Today from your local election headquarters.
Mr. Lieutenant Governor, for being with us today. Let's talk first of all about your top line priorities for the 88th legislative session.
So, Jackie, the priorities I laid out last week, 21, are just a part of the list. There are many other things we want to do, but they were shaped in large part from my bus tour that one of my first trips was out to the Panhandle. We started in Dumas and worked our way down from the Panhandle all the way down to Midland eventually. But we spent a lot of time out in the Panhandle meeting with sheriffs and the county judges and local elected officials. And I came away with requests and needs as I traveled the state. Again, we did over 130 cities in 17 days all across the state. And in the Panhandle, Judge Tanner early on had said to me earlier in this year, before the bus tour, that they needed a state mental health care facility in the Panhandle, West Texas area. And I told her I'd try to get it done. So it's in part of my plan that I laid out. to add 5 to 6 new hospitals or beds to current hospitals, or buy beds at local hospitals. I say buy beds where we take over certain beds in private hospitals for mental health care. But I want to build a brand new healthcare facility. It's going to be in our budget for the Panhandle. The second thing is, as I traveled through rural Texas, Panhandle and everywhere else, and I met sheriffs, they're really hard pressed on their budgets and hard pressed on their workload. Many of the counties, have a sheriff. Some of them are making it 30-some thousand a year, 40-some thousand. The deputies, 20-some thousand, 30-some thousand. We've always relied as a state on the counties to pick up the cost of their sheriff, which runs the jail, and the law enforcement force of deputies. These rural counties now, which we have about 230, depending on how you define them in size, about 230 of our counties are rural. We need, and I'm going to put forth a program to help fund law enforcement in rural Texas, so that sheriffs can make a minimum of $75,000. They can afford to pay deputies. They can hire more people. They can get the equipment they need. I don't know what that number is going to be, but it's going to be a significant number, because they really get very little to nothing from the state. So those two things, when you tie them together, mental health care facilities for civil, that means just regular folks, and forensic for people who commit a crime and have a mental health care issue. Right now, if you arrest someone in the Panhandle, you might have to drive all the way to Wichita Falls to find a bed for them if you can. So those are two big programs that are really going to impact the Panhandle for sure.
I recently did a mental health special program, and I talked to some sheriffs around the Panhandle, and that was the number one thing they said. We need help handling the mental health problem that we have. We're just not equipped to take care of it. So that would take care of two things at one time for many of them.
And look, it's a big problem all over the country. It's a big problem in Texas. There'll never be enough beds to handle all the folks, because the problem is so enormous. I mean, the statistics show that 40% of families are touched by mental illness in some way, from mild depression to something very serious. And a lot of our people in jails have mental illness issues. So there are a lot of factors there, but we need to give them help, and we're going to give them all the help we can. And it'll be ongoing. That's the key. And the other part of that is we need to create scholarships for nurses. We have a lack of nurses. We have 2,500 beds right now for mental health care in the state. 1,000 are empty, because 600, we don't have enough nurses for 600 of them, and the other beds are broken or need repair. And so these new hospitals will add more beds, but we need the nurses to staff them. We currently have scholarships for math teachers and science teachers for young people that want to do that. And to go into law enforcement, we'll pay for your scholarship. There's some parameters, but those three professions, we pay for our doctors. But I want to create a scholarship program for nurses. And also we need to improve our telehealth, because when it comes to mental health, we don't have enough psychiatrists, enough psychologists. We just don't have enough of those folks. And a lot of them want to go to the big city and make a lot of money. So we need to have telehealth program too. So this is a major effort. I've spent more money on mental health care than any lieutenant governor in history, I'm told, and I'm going to continue to do that, and law enforcement.
I know that Representative Price is very concerned about broadband access as well, and how that affects not only our mental health, but healthcare all across the Panhandle, and how that has really changed the game for people. What do you foresee in that area in broadband?
Well, and he's absolutely right, because you can't have telehealth if you don't have a good broadband. So I don't usually look at awards, and I don't talk about them, but this will give you a clear indication of where I am on this issue. I was given the award for, I don't know, Legislator of the Year or Pioneer on broadband last session. The senators and the House members deserved it all, but I guess they gave it to me because we did totally support the legislation to increase broadband in rural Texas. And it's a significant amount of money we're investing. It takes time to get all that fiber optic cable to the furthest person, who's living the furthest out of town. But we need to have broadband access to everyone, our schools, our hospitals, and most of our schools have good broadband, but a lot of our citizens don't. And so I've been a champion on that. We'll continue to be a champion on that.
The Lieutenant Governor also spoke about the importance of broadband access. You heard him speak a little bit about it there, but he talked more about it and increasing pay for rural law enforcement agencies. And as a reminder, we talked a lot about the potential for another state hospital here in the Panhandle and spoke with other political leaders about it on our special program, Mind Matters. You can catch that over on our website, myhighplains.com. State Senator-elect Kevin Sparks making a stop in Amarillo. Sparks was in town for the High Plains Republican Women's Christmas Party and 40th anniversary party. Sparks took the time to share some of the goals he has for his first term in the state Senate.
One of the issues that we've talked about quite a bit are mental health issues, which really is an issue not just across the state, but across the nation. And I've been working with some of your local officials on trying to secure a mental health facility for Amarillo.
Senator-elect Sparks also said he plans to work on the energy grid, ERCOT, and he hopes to be assigned to the Natural Resources Committee after he takes the oath of office in January. We're hearing more from political leaders about their goals for the next year, including Senator James Lankford. Coming up next, his 3 main priorities and how he's working to get those accomplished. 2022 draws to a close. Members of Congress are working on the country's budget and a list of individual priorities. When asked about his individual priorities for the upcoming year, Oklahoma Senator James Lankford says his constituents are asking him to focus on inflation, illegal immigration and its impact, and finding steady work for military spouses.
One thing that I hear from people is we've got to deal with inflation, the cost of everything. And now 8% plus inflation now for an entire year. It's really affecting a lot of families. Just the price of eggs, the price of energy, price of fertilizer. I mean, you just go on and on and on. The price has just accelerated so fast that people are really having a hard time with it. People want to know, what are we going to do to be able to deal with inflation?
In regard to immigration, Senator Lankford says illegal immigration is causing a rapid flow of drugs coming into the country. Senator Lankford sponsored the Military House Employment Act that was approved in the Senate and is now awaiting approval in the House. Something that did pass and is headed to the president's desk to be signed into law last week, the landmark Respect for Marriage Act.
The motion is adopted.
Final vote was 258 to 169, with 1 member voting present. 39 Republicans crossed the aisle to vote in favor of the bill. H.R. 8404, as it's officially known, will codify federal protection for marriages of same-sex and interracial couples across the country.
On this vote,
a local hospital district bringing back masking to try and keep their employees safe. Coming up next, how our rural hospital system is holding up to the stress of COVID, the flu, strep, and RSV. Public Health Department's weekly COVID report card shows a significant increase in cases across Potter and Randall County. According to the report, there were 665 new cases reported just this week. That brings the total number of active cases up to 1,262, as a jump of more than 500 cases over the last week. There are also 38 people hospitalized with the virus. 7 are in the ICU. 1 is on a ventilator. Regional and rural hospitals are being inundated with people coming in with COVID, the flu, and RSV. John Henderson, the president and CEO of the Texas Organization of Rural and Community Hospitals, tells us it varies by region, but most rural hospitals in Texas are holding up to bed capacity right now. Henderson says while rural facilities are seeing increased volumes of both flu and RSV cases, they're not being pushed to the limit like some children's hospitals in urban areas. Jeff Barnhart, the CEO of the Deaf Smith County Hospital District, says they've seen a big wave recently with COVID, the flu, RSV, and even strep keeping them busy.
Last weekend, our clinic in 2 days saw 70-something patients. Our ER has been stacking up. You know, we're full. We can't see any more in our clinic, so that volume is moving over to our ER.
Some of that inundation in the ER becomes a staffing issue. And rural hospitals generally have had trouble, not just with nurses and doctors, but respiratory therapists, and all that becomes important.
Hart says they're okay on bed availability right now, but with staff out sick, they've returned to masking requirements for their employees. Starting next year, anxiety disorder will be a qualifying condition for medical cannabis in New Mexico. That was announced by the New Mexico Department of Health's medical cannabis program. Anxiety disorder will be added to the program's list of qualifying conditions for enrollment starting January 1st. It will be the first new condition that's been added since 2019. The Randall County Sheriff's Office taking time to honor some of its employees. Coming up in This Happened, we'll tell you about the heroism of some of those employees who were recognized last week. The Randall County Sheriff's Office celebrating 10 people during their quarterly awards ceremony. That happened this week. During the awards, 9 RSCO members received life-saving awards for saving a life in the line of duty. 2 recipients saved a woman from a burning car after an accident. 2 other staff members saved the life of an inmate. Sheriff Chris Forbes says it's important to show the men and women in the department gratitude. Another person who was honored was a dispatcher who has a longevity award with that department. Don't forget that you can follow along with us on social media throughout the week. You can find me on Facebook, Jackie Kingston there. You can also follow us on Twitter. I'm Jackie Kingston plus the number 1 there for now. And stay up with all the latest political news with us throughout the week on our website. That, of course, myhighplains.com, as everyone furiously tries to get legislative priorities passed before the end of the year. Our Washington, D.C. Bureau keeping us up to date on everything that's happening there as well. Thanks for being here. See you soon.